Hi, I'm Galilea. Today I'm going to tell you my story. But before I continue, please share, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. 4 years is a long time to raise a kid alone in a one-bedroom apartment, especially when your ex vanishes without a trace or child support. But Lily and I managed. We always have. My daughter just turned 6 last month, and I promised her we'd visit my sister in California. I've been saving up for these tickets for almost a year, working double shifts at the diner and taking freelance graphic design gigs whenever Lily was asleep. The day of our flight, everything went wrong. My alarm didn't go off, the taxi was late, and Lily spilled orange juice all over her favorite travel outfit. By the time we reached our gate, I was exhausted. Final boarding call for Flight 2187 to Los Angeles, the announcement blared as we rushed to the gate. "Mommy, are we going to make it?" Lily asked, her little legs struggling to keep up. "We will, baby. Just hold my hand tight," I said, practically dragging her along. We made it just as they were about to close the doors. The flight attendant gave me that look, the one part sympathy, part annoyance. "Cutting it close, ma'am," she said, checking our boarding passes. "Sorry, rough morning," I mumbled, guiding Lily down the aisle. Our seats were in the very back, 32A and B. I'd booked the window for Lily, hoping she'd enjoy the view and maybe sleep for part of the 5-hour flight. As we approached our row, I noticed the aisle seat was already occupied. A man in a tailored gray suit sat there, engrossed in something on his tablet. He glanced up briefly as we arrived, and I caught a glimpse of striking blue eyes before he returned his attention to his screen. "Excuse me, we're in the window and middle," I said. He stood without a word, stepping into the aisle to let us by. Nothing rude, but not particularly friendly either. "Thank you," I said, helping Lily with her seatbelt before buckling my own. The first 2 hours were uneventful. Lily watched cartoons on the tablet I'd loaded with her favorites, and I tried to catch up on a magazine. Our roommate remained silent, alternating between work on his tablet and calls he took in hushed tones. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Lily whispered, tugging at my sleeve. "The food cart should come by soon, sweetie," I said, digging through my bag. "I have some crackers if you need something now." "I'm saving room for the cookies they have on planes," she announced, loud enough that our neighbor definitely heard. He smiled slightly, the first real acknowledgement of our existence. It was a nice smile, I noticed. His whole face changed when the professional mask slipped. "They're serving lunch on this flight, actually," he said. "I think there's pasta or chicken." "See, Lily? Even better than cookies," I said. "But I want cookies too," she insisted. The man chuckled, and I found myself laughing with him. There was something familiar about his laugh that I couldn't quite place. "I have a nephew about your age," he told Lily. "He negotiates for dessert the exact same way." "Is he 6'2"? Lily asked, suddenly interested in our neighbor. 5.5, and he makes sure everyone knows about that half," he replied. "I'm 6 in 2 weeks, Lily declared proudly. "Very impressive," he said seriously, and I appreciated how he spoke to her like a person, not talking down as many adults do with children. When the meal service came, he helped us lower our trays since I was struggling with both mine and Lily's while trying to keep her crayon set from spilling everywhere. "Thank you, mister," I said. "Daniel," he replied. "Just Daniel is fine." "I'm Galilea, and this chatterbox is Lily," I said. "Nice to meet you both," he said. There was that smile again, and another flicker of familiarity that I couldn't place. After lunch, Lily fell asleep watching her cartoons. I tried to stay awake, but the early morning and rush had taken their toll. The next thing I knew, my head was resting against something firm but comfortable. I jerked awake, mortified to realize I'd fallen asleep on Daniel's shoulder. But that wasn't why my heart suddenly raced and my stomach dropped. Now that I was looking at him properly, without the chaos of boarding or the distraction of Lily, I recognized him. How could I not? His face had been all over the business pages of every newspaper and magazine for years. "You're Daniel Mercer," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Guilty as charged," he replied with that same easy smile. "Daniel Mercer, CEO of Mercer Technologies." The company that had bought out the small design firm where I'd worked 4 years ago. The company that had laid off our entire department without warning, including me, 6 months pregnant at the time. "You okay?" he asked, noticing my expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "In a way, I have," I said, my mind racing. "I used to work for you. Well, not directly for you, but for Mercer Technologies. I was a graphic designer at Pinnacle Designs when your company acquired it." His expression shifted slightly, a flicker of discomfort passing over his features. "I remember the Pinnacle acquisition," he said carefully. "That was, what, 4 years ago?" 4 years, 2 months, and 17 days, I said. "I remember because I was 6 months pregnant when your company decided our entire department was redundant. No severance, no extended health benefits. Nothing." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I wasn't directly involved in the post-acquisition restructuring." "Of course not," I said, my voice sharper than intended. "I'm sure you just signed the papers and collected the profits while people like me had to figure out how to afford prenatal care without insurance." "Mommy?" Lily's sleepy voice interrupted. "Why are you mad?" "I'm not mad, sweetie," I said, trying to soften my tone. "Just having a grown-up conversation." "Perhaps we should continue this another time," Daniel suggested quietly. "There won't be another time," I replied. "When we land, you'll go back to your penthouse and corporate jet, and I'll go back to serving pancakes at the diner so I can afford to buy my daughter new shoes for school." "You're a waitress?" he asked, seeming genuinely surprised. "And a freelance designer when I can get the work," I said. Turns out companies aren't eager to hire pregnant women, and by the time Lily was born, I'd been out of the industry too long. The rest of the flight was tense. Daniel tried several times to engage in conversation, but I kept my responses short. Lily, thankfully, was absorbed in her cartoons again. As we began our descent into Los Angeles, Daniel handed me his business card. "I'd like to make this right," he said. "Call my office on Monday. I'll have my assistant set up a proper meeting." "Make it right?" I echoed. "How exactly do you plan to do that? Give back the 4 years I've spent struggling? The career opportunities I lost? The stress of raising a child alone while working 60-hour weeks?" "I can't change the past," he admitted. "But I can try to help with the future. Just call." I took the card, not planning to use it. But as we exited the plane, something made me tuck it into my wallet instead of the trash. My sister Mara was waiting at arrivals. She hugged Lily tightly, then me. "You look exhausted," she said as she drove us to her house. "Bad flight?" "Interesting flight," I corrected her, and shared what had happened. "You have to call him," Mara insisted that night after Lily was asleep. "What's the worst that could happen?" "He could offer me some insulting token gesture that does nothing to address the real damage his company caused," I said. "Or he could offer you a job," Mara countered. "Or a proper settlement. You won't know unless you call." I did call, more out of curiosity than hope. To my surprise, his assistant connected me directly to him. "Galilea, thank you for calling," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I've been thinking about our conversation. I'd like to meet when you return to New York." "Why?" I asked bluntly. "Because what happened to you and others at Pinnacle wasn't right," he said. "I've spent the weekend reviewing the acquisition documents. The restructuring was handled by our former COO, who assured me that all affected employees were given proper severance and extended benefits." "Well, we weren't," I said. "Many of us tried to fight it, but we couldn't afford lawyers to go up against your corporate team." "I believe you," he said, "and I want to make it right. Not just for you, but for everyone affected. Would you be willing to help me identify other former Pinnacle employees who were mistreated?" The meeting was set for the following week, after Lily and I returned from our trip. I was skeptical, but curious. Mara thought it was fate. "Maybe he'll fall in love with you," she joked. "It would be like a movie." "This isn't a romance, Mara," I said firmly. "This is about justice for me and my former colleagues." When we returned to New York, Daniel's driver picked us up from the airport, a gesture I found both thoughtful and slightly patronizing. Mr. Mercer requested I take you directly to your home, then bring you to the office tomorrow at 10, if that suits you, the driver explained. I agreed, too tired to argue. The next morning, the same driver appeared at my door precisely at 9:30. The Mercer Technologies headquarters was a glass tower in Midtown, the kind of place I'd once dreamed of working. Now, it just reminded me of everything I'd lost. Daniel met me in the lobby himself, rather than sending an assistant. "Thank you for coming," he said, guiding me to a private elevator. "I've set up a meeting with our current COO, legal team, and HR director." "Quite a welcome committee," I remarked. "This is important," he replied simply. The meeting was not what I expected. Instead of defending the company's actions or offering me some small settlement to go away quietly, Daniel began by apologizing to me and, by extension, to all the former Pinnacle employees. After investigating what happened during the Pinnacle acquisition, I've discovered that our former COO, Victor Randall, deliberately misrepresented the severance packages to the board, Daniel explained. He pocketed a significant portion of the funds allocated for employee transitions. "So this wasn't company policy?" I asked skeptically. "It was fraud," the current COO, Tessa Williams, said bluntly, "and we have the documentation to prove it." "We've already reported this to the authorities," added Mark Chen, the legal director. "Victor will face criminal charges, but more importantly, we want to make this right for you and the other affected employees." "How?" I asked. I wasn't about to celebrate until I knew exactly what they were offering. "Full retroactive severance packages for everyone," Daniel said, "plus interest for the 4-year delay, compensation for lost benefits, and for those interested, priority consideration for current open positions at Mercer Technologies." "That's more than I expected," I admitted. "It's what should have happened in the first place," Daniel replied. "And there's something else. I reviewed your portfolio from your time at Pinnacle. Your work was exceptional. We currently have an opening for a senior design director in our creative department. The position is yours if you want it." "Senior director? I was a mid-level designer when I left." "You would have been promoted by now if you'd stayed in the industry," he said confidently. "And your freelance work shows you've continued to develop your skills despite the circumstances." "You researched my freelance work?" "I did my homework," he admitted with a slight smile. I was impressed. It was tempting, but I wasn't about to jump at the first offer. "I'll need to think about it." "Of course," he said. "Take all the time you need." Over the next few weeks, things moved quickly. With my help, the company identified all the former Pinnacle employees who had been affected. Everyone received their promised compensation. Victor Randall, the former COO, was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. I eventually accepted the position at Mercer Technologies, but on my terms, flexible hours, so I could be there for Lily, and the ability to build my own team. I specifically requested to bring in several of my former Pinnacle colleagues who had struggled to find good positions after the layoffs. 6 months later, our department was thriving. My team's designs were winning awards and bringing in new clients. I'd moved Lily to a better school and a nicer apartment, though I was careful not to spoil her. Daniel and I maintained a strictly professional relationship, though he often asked about Lily and occasionally joined team lunches. I wasn't interested in romance. Not with him. Not with anyone. My focus was on rebuilding my career and giving Lily the stability she deserved. The real satisfaction came when the company held its annual shareholders meeting. Victor Randall's replacement as COO, Tessa Williams, gave a presentation on ethics and corporate responsibility, using the Pinnacle situation as a case study in what not to do. Due to the unethical actions of one executive, we nearly destroyed the lives of dozens of talented people, Tessa explained to the shareholders. The financial cost of making this right was significant, but the reputational damage could have been incalculable if we hadn't addressed it. Victor Randall was eventually sentenced to 7 years in prison. His assets were seized to repay the company and the affected employees. He lost everything: his reputation, his freedom, his ill-gotten wealth. As for me, I didn't just rebuild my career. I surpassed where I would have been if the layoff had never happened. My team's success led to my promotion to executive creative director within a year. Daniel and I eventually developed a mutual respect, though I never fully forgave what his company had done. He implemented company-wide reforms to ensure nothing like the Pinnacle situation could happen again, including an employee advocacy office that reported directly to the board of directors. Last month, I ran into him in the elevator. He was heading to a meeting with potential investors. "I've been meaning to thank you," he said. "For what?" "For falling asleep on my shoulder on that flight," he replied with a small smile. "If you hadn't, I might never have learned what happened with Pinnacle. Your willingness to speak up didn't just help you and your former colleagues, it made the whole company better." "I didn't do it to help the company," I said honestly. "I did it for justice, and for Lily." "I know," he nodded. "That's why it worked." As the elevator reached my floor, I stepped out, then turned back to face him. "You know, for a corporate villain, you turned out to be pretty decent." He laughed. "Coming from you, I'll take that as high praise." That's the thing about life. Sometimes your worst moments lead to your best opportunities. I went from being a struggling single mom to an executive with a corner office. And while the money and title are nice, the real victory is knowing that the person responsible for my hardship faced consequences, and that I played a part in ensuring no one else would suffer the same fate. So that's my story. I didn't get revenge in the traditional sense. I got something better. I got justice, not just for me, but for everyone who was wronged. And in the end, isn't that what really matters? What would you have done in my situation? Would you have accepted the job offer, or would you have taken the settlement and walked away from Mercer Technologies forever?